Hey everyone, it's Andrzej on Software. Just a quick thought about the tooling around backlogs. I'm a developer, so the perspective of a developer is most important to me, but I do understand and respect other perspectives on the project. The problem is that in almost all the projects I was involved in, there is always this huge and long-running debate about like how to configure the tooling and what tools to use for this specific project. While I don't really have a constructive answer, like today I will not tell you like this is the tool you should use. I don't think there is such tool, by the way. But I just want you to be aware of of mixing certain concerns around the problem of the backlog. So as developers, we have a very specific, and I mean as we, I'm saying as me, as RKNC, the kind of attitude we have to software development, we would like to have a perspective where there is a very clean and very clear backlog, where the developers just see what's the next thing they should be working on, including maybe the things that they were working on right now. So a very clear view of what is happening and what will be happening in the near future. We don't really need much more than, I don't know, seeing the next 7 or 8 issues. Obviously, when we finish a ticket, it's not really fully finished. Now, I don't even want to touch the complicated life cycle of issues which are often seen. I think like Trello, just having one column where you have a backlog and just assigning a person to the backlog means that we have started working on that. And if the ticket disappears from the backlog, it means it's finished. And then the different perspectives starts because you want the QA people or some kind of QA process, quality assurance, to just verify if this is working. Obviously, I'm still assuming that programmers are doing automated tests and programmers ensure that from their perspective everything is really great. We don't want to duplicate the effort, but at some point usually you will have someone who plays the role of a QA. Sometimes it's just a customer, sometimes you have dedicated people for that, and there's a dedicated process. And from my perspective, from developer perspective, they should have their own life cycle. Like they get notified when I finish a work. They know what should be acceptance criteria. They can start their process, whether it's manual or automated. And ideally, the result is that everything is fine and nothing is really there. They will mark it as complete in their world, in their like bounded context. And the developers, they are not really bothered anymore. However, there might be the case where they will discover that some acceptance criteria are not met, and then from their perspective, the issue should go back to the backlog. However, from developers' perspective, they probably started a new ticket meanwhile. So it means that if the ticket goes back, the first question is who should be assigned to that? And my answer is no one. This ticket, from the perspective of programmer, is just another task to do. We should, from my perspective, a developer perspective, it could be and maybe even should be a new issue on the backlog or new ticket on the backlog. It could have a reference to the previous one just to have quick view on the context and the conversation, but it's more like the bug fix or something like this. So even if I did the original work, I think it doesn't matter who will be the next one to finish this. It may make sense for me to just quickly jump to it and do it, but from my perspective, just having one ticket on myself is a better approach. So whoever takes the next task from the backlog will do it, and if it's more important than everything else, then the people who are responsible for priorities will put it at the top of the backlog. Which gets us to the next perspective. There is the project management perspective and product owner perspective. They're sometimes mixed, but very often they have different needs. The project manager looks at the whole situation from a time-based perspective. They need estimates. They want to ensure that certain things are part of this release, which will happen in 2 weeks' time. So they have this very time-based approach. And they probably could have a different tool for that. There are some tools which are really good for project managers, and at the same time, they're not really good for developers or not good for QA people. So, but it's up to the project manager or the product owner, it sometimes varies, to define what is the priority of the specific task. And So the project manager deals with the time, while product owner deals with the features. So how exactly the product looks like right now, what is the list of features. They sometimes don't care about the smaller stories as developed by the programmers, while I still believe programmers should work on functional stories, like each story makes sense from a user perspective. There should be no technical stories. I think it's a good idea that a product manager or product owner, they should have probably a bigger picture, like a bigger perspective, without going into so many details around that. So maybe they require a different need. And how to integrate all of those perspectives, this is the tricky part, and I don't really have an answer for that. It might be that they all have their own Trello boards, for example, and the developers just care about one Trello board. They could have read-only access to some other Trello boards, or in those projects where we really encourage developers to take part of the other processes, the developers could have access and be able to change the other boards. But I think that the simpler those tools are, the better. But once we try to combine the different perspective within one view, like say for example one Trello board, or even one Trello list, then this is a problem. Because the developer perspective is really very simple. We're not able to work on more than one task at the same moment. So the only requirement here is that we are assigned to one task, and it should be clear who is working on that. Mostly among developers, to just clearly know visibly who is working on what. This view is also useful from project management perspective. So the project tooling could be also updated when we are assigning to a developer to a task, or we assign themselves to a task, but sometimes it's not required. So you see, from now I will switch to a different way of explaining this. Those are all different bounded contexts. In domain-driven design, we try to say that they all hold their own data, they have their own storages, and most specifically, we want to have different read models, and different read models for different people, because from my developer perspective, I might be not so much interested in the QA process in all details, or all the decision-making process around the product ownership. I need to have my clean and very simple way of looking at what I'm working right now, and maybe what I will be working within the next week. So, just quick thought. I'm wondering how it works in your company, on your projects. What kind of tooling you're using? I was using Trello most of the time. Now I'm working on Pivotal. Pivotal is great. It has very rich features, but it's easy to abuse, I think, by trying to combine all the needs within one place. But really, it's a difficult answer. So I don't really have a tool to recommend. But I'm really interested how you solve this problem. So feel free to reply me in any way you like. Thank you.